There were some interesting things that happened during the session. Not a lot went on, but then, as usual, where we should be dealing with budget issues, at the last minute you saw a lot of backdoor deals being cut, so people could raise money for their campaigns and different things like that. And
Really? So the taxpayers?
yeah, well, it was front page of the Oregonian with some of the issues that were happening and everything, with the speaker passing special legislation to help out one of the big donors that's in the building. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the investigations there. And you saw a lot of cover-up things that were happening. I'd almost call it the cover-up for Kitzhaber Session, that 1-month session, because we were pushing very hard. We are getting a federal investigation going with what's going on in the healthcare. We have $300 million that we spent on just Cover Oregon alone for getting a website up and running. 20 million we know is unaccounted for, that we don't know where it's at, where it went to. We couldn't even get a working website out of anything with all the money that was spent. I mean, everything they did they were faking web pages, faking transactions and things like that to get more money from the federal government. So there are a lot of concerns there, and I've been calling for federal investigative auditors to come in, and I want forensic auditors that will actually go in and look at where every dime went, track it through all the different bank accounts where it's went to see what happened with a lot of that money.
Is there going to be any success in that with a Democratic controlled?
Well, we'll see, because the federal government looks like they are going to come in. They're starting to ask questions because they should be concerned about it too. I mean, if Obama truly cares about this and wants it to work, he should be the one that should be leading the charge on it. Unfortunately, he's not the one doing it. We have Greg Walden, who's one of our congressmen that's been very supportive in getting this to happen. Dennis Richardson's been very vocal, Jason Conger, myself, there's a lot of us. When they even brought the business plan forward the very first time, it did not make sense to even do this. And I was very vocal, spoke out against it, because I try to put myself in the consumer shoes.
The business plan, and what is that?
They had to lay out a plan to bring to us to show us where the health insurance exchange would actually stand up on its own and be self-sufficient. And there was no way that was going to happen. So the information that was brought to us, I sat down in my office with Rocky King, with all these different lobbyists, different people, and I said, hey, just bring me some evidence that this is going to work. Give me one reason I can go back to my district and tell people why I should support this. And nobody ever came back to me with anything to show that this was going to be a good thing. And I slowly watched people that were against it all of a sudden be for it. And it's because they were basically getting covered or themselves protected. And when you're doing that, it's just driving the cost up, and it's not going to work. And right now, my biggest issue that I have to deal with are people that are on the Medicaid program because they can't get seen by a doctor, they can't get any help, and then people who had insurance that lost their insurance, or they had insurance and it went up 50% from what they were paying before.
Yeah.
So,
okay, step back. I thought Cover Oregon was a done deal, and now you're saying there's a business plan out there. What's the...
Well, it was done beforehand. So it was passed, but they had to bring that to us in the short session, and that's when it would pass, the last short session that we had. So, and that was in 2012. So 2011, they developed the plan, brought it to us in 12. You got a very short window to look at it and then pass it. And that's the problem. Even in these short sessions, they're trying to run these big budget bills through that they just give them to you, and you literally have not even a day to look at them, and you have to go vote on them.
So in 2014, though, just a couple weeks ago,
Yes.
if it was a done deal in 2011, 2012,
It was done,
then,
but it has to be self-sustaining.
so, but the budget, so it was a done deal, it passed.
Right.
But now there has to be a budget.
Well, and you have to budget on it continually. So, and as what's going to happen, so 2014, it's covered, but as we go into this next legislative session, the federal matching dollars are going to decline, and it's basically 5% each year. So where are those dollars going to come for to pay for this? And we're expanding the Medicaid population by about 300,000 people, and unfortunately that's all we're doing is expanding the Medicaid population and running people out of private insurance and putting them onto Medicaid, where there's no money to pay for the program. So essentially, to pay for it, to cover a third of the population the way it's growing, they're going to basically have to double or almost triple tax rates on people that are working to pay for this program.
Huh. Wow, that's amazing. You know, on another note too, I'm curious about is, I don't know if you've read Obamacare, the several thousand-page bill, but of course, most people who voted yes didn't read it. But it gives the secretary authority all throughout the entire bill, every page. It'll say as the secretary sees fit, and the secretary is directly in the authority comes from the president to give the secretary.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff, though, that's written into law in there that they're bypassing. And that's why, I mean, you have Rand Paul, who has a lawsuit against the president for using executive orders to overturn laws that have been put in place by Congress that have been signed off by the president. If he didn't want them at that time, that's when he should have changed them.
Well,
Oregon,
maybe, but I'm kind of curious about this as the secretary deems fit, because to me that showed just a complete open-ended bills that Obama can executive order sign. But how does that fit into Oregon?
So for Oregon, I mean, we just have to exercise or execute the law the way it's written. But Oregon requests waivers to get out of things, and that's why Oregon wanted to do their own health care plan. And that's why we ended up with Cover Oregon. Unfortunately, there were too many people that thought it was going to work and are in it very deep. But at some point, we need to count the losses that we have and go look at fixing the system, driving down the cost of health care, and looking at changing the whole system and start with the consumers, put responsibility on the patients. We don't do that. And until we go to some sort of health savings account where you say, hey, this is how much money you get if you're on Medicaid, the system's going to be abused. They're going to use it to the max, but if they only have X dollars to do it, and this is how much each doctor costs, and until we start increasing reimbursement rates to doctors, we're going to lose doctors in the state.
And so you're saying that there is an investigation out for corruption, that different people in Salem have used this for their own financial gain.
Well, we don't know what's happened there, so I can't say anybody used it for their own financial gain and everything. There's federal auditors that are going to be looking at this. That's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that you and I will never know about until they're finished with their investigation, and then a lot of that stuff will be made public. But the fact is, we spent $300 million to develop a website and set up Cover Oregon, and we got nothing for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. How do you use that much money and can't even come up with a working website?
Yeah.
And the reason I find it a little offensive that we weren't able to do that, we spent $80,000 with 2 programmers and had a working website that had logic programs in it that were more than capable of doing what they needed to run this, basically the health insurance exchange. So and there were a lot of people that raised red flags during the whole thing. We're starting to get stuff that's been brought to us. Channel 2 has done a great job at investigating it. The reports, we're finally starting to get them out of them, but they were stonewalling us on getting a lot of the information. And we've had employees that were IT programmers actually talk to us and say 2 weeks before this thing was supposed to go live, you would have a department head who would stand up and ask questions like, well, what's the scope of our project here?
Yeah.
Because they didn't put project managers in, and they were just taking all the money in and weren't accomplishing anything. And a lot of it was, I don't think they were bringing in competent IT people. They were just transferring people out of other departments, and they were moving into the health insurance exchange and into Cover Oregon so they could get more pay or move up the ladder. And then they jumped in and were way over their head. They didn't know what they were doing. So if nothing else, it was the governor having complete incompetence on who he was hiring to run these programs, or he knew from the very beginning, which we see reports where they were saying they had issues right from the beginning, that there were problems, and it was complete negligence on his part.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either incompetence or negligence, but I mean, that's something voters need to look at very seriously as we go forward.
Is there corruption possibly, or is
You know,
that something you don't want to
That part I don't know. So,
okay.
but I mean, I doubt there's anything there. There might be something there, but to me, it's just incompetence
Mm-hmm.
or gross negligence. I mean, those are the only two excuses for it. And Channel 2 News has tried to get interviews with him.
Mm-hmm.
We've done interviews, and he's got up and walked out on him and everything, and he
Mm-hmm.
says he didn't know, but it's funny with all the reports that we finally are starting to get, we see where they were reporting this very early on, that there were serious issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells me if he didn't know anything in his signature program that he flew back to DC and everything else
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for, would tell me he's completely incompetent.
Yeah, well, I've
negligent.
been hearing too much when I do research on the internet and stuff, and the scapegoat for, and I'm not saying the governor's doing this, but I'm just saying I've been hearing, I don't know too often. When they do know, they use it as an excuse. I mean, we've been hearing about the different scandals. Well, I didn't know. You know, when they did know, because
It's
you know,
his staff.
obvious.
It's
yeah.
his employees.
Yeah.
He hires all of the people.
Yeah.